Hi there, it's Elaine here. I'm in my workshop on my bench with my new setup. For now it's a bit temporary. I have a little bit of trouble connecting. It is actually connected to the bench right now, so I can't get very high, and I think it'll have to do for now, but I might end up asking hubby to set something up in the ceiling, because directly in front of me is a window and lots of stuff. Oops. Yes, so today what I thought I would show you is I'm gonna go straight into how I make my beads. Before I took all of my bead making equipment down and packed it away, I videoed a small video, which you'll see in a moment, of what it looked like and how I make them, and I couldn't do that without it all being up. So this is obviously after it's been all taken down. I'll let you watch how I make them, then we can talk about some of the beads and you'll understand better what I'm talking about. So I will let you watch that first, and I'll be back at the end and I'll see you in a bit. Right then, here I am in my workshop. Lots of lovely glass. These are glass rods, which is how I make the glass beads. These are called mandrels, and this one happened to have a bead still left on the end of it. On behind it, there we go. A mandrel is basically the steel rod. This clay part here is called a bead release, and basically it stops the glass sticking to the steel mandrel. Obviously when you take it off the mandrel, that's what's created the hole in the bead. I'll talk about the glass a little bit in a minute. These are marvers, and they help shape a bead, and the lines through them obviously is where the mandrel sits, so that you can spin it. When it's molten, obviously it can come out all sorts of different shapes, so the spinning in there will create it to be round in this case. These are other different shaped marvers that make different shaped beads. They're my diamond shaped ones. These, excuse me, sorry about the noise. These are just flat marvers, which are made. These are all made from graphite, and this one is brass. They're the two things that most of the equipment we use are made from, because anything else the glass sticks to. So this is my torch and a marver on the top to help me shape directly from the torch. He's called Jiminy Cricket. He's actually a GTT Cricket. That's the name of the type of torch it is. The red is the gas, and this is my gas pipe that goes off to my propane gas bottle. And this one, the green one, is my oxygen, and that goes off to an oxygen concentrator. Excuse my messy floor. I have cleaned it, but I've now made more mess on it. Right. They actually, the gas obviously comes out as a jet. I can't show you that because I've actually disconnected the gas from the bottle, the torch from the bottle. This is my kiln, and the kiln is how we slowly cool the beads, because when they're molten, they have stresses that you've created in them from shaping them and doing whatever you do with the beads. And we need to cool them very slowly. So once you've finished working on them, the bead and the mandrel go into the bottom of the kiln, and they will poke out like this. And the kiln's running at a certain temperature, and then what we do is we're calling it garaging it so that it actually stays at that temperature while you're working on whatever beads you want to create. Once you've finished, you can then what they call ramp it down, and what it does is over a period of hours it slowly brings the temperature down at a very gradual pace, so that it takes out the stresses that's been created inside the glass, which makes it stronger. The glass rods come in all colours and slightly different sizes, but they're generally the same length, sort of the same diameter. They don't want to be too thick. I mean, I do have a very thick one here, which is a nice black, and the reason that is because we create with the intense black. It's a very strong black. So the rods, I have two types mainly. I like Effectra, and I like Sim especially, which CIM, which is short for Creation is Messy. That's the make of the glass. Sorry. Obviously tools. I do use quite a few tools. These help do various jobs. I've got obviously tongs, which mash the beads flat, and they come in all sorts of shapes and sizes. So basically they create flat beads, and I'll show you them in a little while. We have pokey tools, and I've got one that's got a hook on the end as well, so it can poke holes into the bead, the glass. Obviously tweezers, various types, and I'll show you what they do in a minute, that mainly for me. I've got a few other specialist tools that I use for shaping, where I can press down spots and things like that. So let's go back. Where did I put me bead? Oh yeah, put it in the kiln, didn't I? To wind on a bead, I'm right-handed, so for me, when I'm applying glass, I need to have the glass in my right hand. Whoops. And we have, if you can imagine, the flames coming out the top of the torch right here, and I usually, roughly about that point, I will have the glass rod in the flame. So we tend to twiddle it, as we call it, twiddle the glass, heat it up so it starts to melt, and then we apply it to the mandrel. So yes, we have to use both hands. So the bead release obviously helps get the bead off, but we need to apply the glass over the bead release, and I don't know whether I can do this holding my thingy as well as a glass rod. Where am I? So yeah, I'm turning the mandrel with, hang on, let me just see if I can pull the rod a bit further out so that you can see what I'm doing. So the glass is melted, in the torch. Where's my torch gone? This is really difficult one-handed with both my hands, one of them holding the camera. So sorry about the wiggling. I can't put up a tripod because I've just got no room at the moment. I'm still cleaning. I've cleaned all this. You wouldn't believe what the mess it was before I started. So the glass rod is melting and we attach the glass to the mandrel and we rotate the mandrel in our hands. So I'm doing this, and that would pull off the glass from the rod, and that creates the glass onto the mandrel. Shaping it, as I said, we use various tools to shape it. This is a bead press, and you obviously these are the lines for the mandrel. So I'm trying to do it without my hand in the way, going right through it, and then they slot together. That's also got the same, obviously you have to make sure it's the right way round, and then they slot together and you press the bead, mandrel comes out the side, and you can press different shapes. I've got various different presses that all do different shapes. Yeah, sorry, I forgot to do this in the main part, so I'm just going to add this as a little addendum in the middle. So yes, that's a bead press, which is a straight-sided lentil duo, which means there's two different sizes of a straight-sided lentil, which is a flattened bead with a dome top. I'll show you one of those when I get my beads out. What I'll do is I'll just explain what stringers are. So the rods are fairly reasonable thickness. A stringer is a thinner rod, if you like. So the stringer, very thin glass, as you see when it's so small. So these thin stringers are created by pulling them off the main rods, and they need to be this thin, and this is what we create the dots with. Now my white one here is a purpose made one. You can buy stringers ready made and they're quite thick, but sometimes you need a really thin one to do all sorts of work on the beads. And oh, wrong way, sorry. So you need a really thin one, and basically you need the stringer. You basically heat and dob and make a dot, then you melt it in and it makes a circle. Glass naturally will ball up when it's heated. It will create little tiny balls, and once they melt into the bead, they usually stay, well, pretty round. Depends on what you've done to the bead, really. The dots are made with stringers that we've hand pulled from a main rod. So I use this particular tool to squash down beads, to squash down dots like on the beads. We have very decorative stuff that we can use. This is called frit. It's basically crushed glass, very small, and it makes lots of pretty dots all over the beads, all mushed up together. There's things called Marini. These ones happen to be Dragon Eye Marini. and you need quite an accurate application of things like Marini, and I use this particular tool to squash them down. Yeah, it's a bit better on there, isn't it? So it's just a flat hand tool. I have got this one's a brass one, and I can push holes into the bead with this tool. I haven't used it much because it was quite a newish tool. I hadn't had it long. I've got a few other tools which are various different shapers that I quite like using. And this one is a sort of an embossing type of tool. Let's see if I can, yeah. This is like an embossing tool, and when you push it down on a bead, it will make those ridges for you in that sort of fan shaped pattern. I have various different shaped mandrels. This one with the 2 prongs on the Marva is discolouring because they have actually been there for 3 years coated, so I'll have to remove all of the bead release on these. So the 2 prong ones I make buttons with, so they make the 2 holes in the buttons, and you attach. It's a bit more complicated to use those. I've got fatter mandrels, and these make big hole beads. They're 5mm, I think, where my main mandrels are 2.4mm. I have a cabochon mandrel, which makes a flat bottom bead without a hole. The little lump that you can see is what holds the glass onto the mandrel, and I can make a flat backed bead and put a decoration on the top, and that's the mandrel that does that for me. And some of these things obviously are difficult to use, and you have to learn how to do them. This is a pin vise. See if I can. And it has a piece of wire coming out the top. It's just you hold it in the vise. And this is how I make my head pins, where I put the glass directly on the end of the wire. So this particular wire will come out of the bottom of the glass, and you can thread beads directly onto the wire, and I usually create various things on the end to be the bottom of your dangle. So I did used to make quite a lot of head pins. It was one of the things I enjoyed doing. Obviously I tended to make pairs for people to use as earrings and things like that, and that's pretty much how some of my things that I make beads with. I use Effectra and Sim glass. My favourite being Sims actually, but I mean certain things are fine in Effectra. I just enjoy the Sim colours really. They do name them funny things as well. Buy them in a bundle, or quarter kilo bundles, half kilo bundles. This one's called Opalino Yellow, which you wouldn't think so because it's very green, but this is a new one, and I thought the yellow came like that personally, but I'm not quite sure if that might be a different glass to what I thought it was when I bought it. Some glasses don't look anything like how they how they look on the rod. This one looks kind of and that's the colour it comes out. Why can't I get you to focus? It's alright, it's all wet down here because I've been cleaning. So, sorry about that. So the rod is this kind of pale, it's slightly peachy, and it comes out this carnelian colour, which is much more orangey. And it's an opalino, so it's actually semi-opaque. There's all sorts of glasses. Now, some of you may have heard me talk about Triton in my last video, which makes the nice silver glass streaks and shiny silver kind of look to the glass, which focus. This is Triton. As you can see, it looks a very boring kind of, it's actually really dark blue. Oh yeah, you can see that. Focus on what I want you to focus on. You can see it's got a bit of a blue to it. It doesn't know what it wants to focus on, that's the problem. And that will come out silver when you use an oxidizing flame, which means that I change the difference of the oxygen to the propane. They should come out at a similar sort of rate to give you the flame that you require. But if you need an oxidizing flame, it needs more gas or oxygen? Gas, I think. More gas to make the silver come out. It's a long time since I've actually made any, and I've forgotten half of it. So yeah, there's lots of pretty glass, and this is how we use it. And the annealing process is done in my kiln, and my lovely Jiminy Cricket torch, and I'm going to be taking it down because it's actually bolted to my workbench. I need to remove all my tiles, which helps protect the wooden table from, you know, heat from the glass or anything really, because obviously the tools get hot and you need to put them down to cool. And obviously the slate tiles help with the cooling because they're quite cold. So this little chappy here, this has got a marver on the top actually, let's just move that out of the way. This little chappy here is my hot plate. My little hot plate is to help me make the petals for making my flowers. And so once I've made a petal, it would cool very quickly because you're pulling it from a rod and making it quite flat. Let's see, I've got a few petals that I've made over here. So I've pulled them to a petal shape. They're very flat and they will cool very quickly, and they would shatter if I didn't keep them warm. So I put them on my hot plate with the hot plate on to keep them warm. And yeah, that's been cleaned as well because that was all dusty too. And basically I would pull them how many I need to make flowers, and then I would pick them one by one because they're already slightly warm, still kept warm on here. I can enter them back into the flame carefully and be able to attach them to make the flower. So yes, that's how I do my my flowers. Various petals there. I didn't realise I still had that, I forgot. The thing is, when I come in here, it was just left. I had a fall about 3 years ago, and it was literally just after I'd been to Flame Off, because it was in June, and it was like I just haven't touched it for 3 years, and so it just got left exactly as it was. So I've tidied it up, I've cleaned the front part of the bench. Now all this lot's going to be packed away, put away in a box, except for my kiln. My kiln's going to actually sit over in that corner, out the way, once I've cleaned it, because it's still a bit grubby, still a few cobwebs, but I can't get over there to get them yet, as I need the glass out the way to be able to do it. So yes, I've still got quite a lot to do before I can make this a working bench for me to do my bead craft, do my paper crafts on, journals and whatever you, and videoing. And I need to set up obviously a rig for my camera. At the moment I'm just holding this obviously, which I hope I haven't made you too dizzy. And I will show you when it's all clear and I can get some videoing done with my new setup, hopefully, in here. So I've still got a long way to go yet. My main aim is to hopefully clear the bench this weekend. It's Saturday today, and I thought, well, I needed to tidy it a little bit before I filmed this, so I hope you enjoyed that. There's lots more to obviously bead making than what I can really show you, but I will show you a few of my beads, and hopefully you'll know what I'm talking about when I show you the beads. That's it for in my workshop as is. Hopefully next time you'll see it, it'll be all gone and cleared, and except for my kiln, and maybe my hot plate will sit on top of the kiln. And I hope you enjoyed that. Hi, right. Well, I hope you enjoyed that. I thought I'd show you some of my beads. Obviously, I showed you these at the beginning. And now you'll know what I'm talking about. Hopefully, you'll remember. So, cabochons. These are the flat back. You remember the hole? The little knobble that was in the mandrel? Sorry, I've only got one nail done at the moment because I haven't got round to doing the rest of them. The little hole is the little knobble that was on the mandrel. I can't show you the mandrels because they're all packed away. And they're different sizes, and the big mandrel that I actually showed you, I don't have any beads that I've made on that one. These are on the slightly smaller ones that I've got. This was the heart one. I think I showed you the heart one, if I remember, because it was nearly 2 weeks ago when I filmed that. It took me 2 weeks to get through packing it all away, cleaning it all before I did pack it away. This one is basically one of these, and then I've made a rose spiral on the top. So I thought they might be quite fun to do, because I could stick them to the front of journals or books. And then there's some little diddy ones. This is Marini, and I've just put it on a base colour, just sort of squashed in using my tools. And Marini actually are made a bit like rock, you know, like seaside rock, candy type rock. They're built up in like a cane form. So you start with they're not made with a mandrel. They're made with a rod, and what you do is you basically swipe glass round a base colour rod and build up the pattern till you've got the pattern you want, and then it's pulled really, really, really thin, and what happens is it then gets smaller, and the actual pattern that you've created gets smaller and smaller, and then basically it's chopped into the small little pieces that you see. So it's made thin enough that it looks, I mean, it can end up being quite a substantially big piece of glass on a rod, and basically it's pulled thin by heating it and pulling, heating and pulling, heating and pulling, and then when you've got it to the thickness, which is obviously back down to what I would say normal kind of rod size again, then you let it cool and you basically chomp it into little tiny sections, which we then can add to the beads. So that's how Marini's made. I've had a go at doing the odd one. In actual fact, I'm not sure. No, that one's not one of mine. I did have a little go at making some, but it takes a lot of practice, and I haven't really done a lot to make it so that I make any good stuff. So yeah, that's Marini. These I've used, this is one of the silver glasses. It's not taken, no, it's not silver glass. What are you talking about, Elaine? This is multi, which means that all these colours, I don't know if you can see the purples. Let's see if I can get close up. I don't know. The trouble is with glass, it's obviously shiny. Try not to get any glare. So there's purples, blues and greens sort of in this swirl that I've created. And the swirl is, I've put it is probably frit, I would imagine, that is this multi-glass. This glass is a Rickenback actually. And I've put the frit onto the glass, and then I've actually put a thick stringer into the middle and basically twisted, and that's created the swirl. And then obviously I've finished off the top. So this was all little dots of glass. The multi makes all of the colours that you can see, which is the purples, the blues and the greens. The glass actually does that. It's quite, I love that glass. And then I've just twisted it to create the spiral. Same with this one, but I've just it wasn't, I don't think it was frit, I think it was just blobs of glass, and then I've just twisted it to create the spiral. So that's the cabochons. These are the buttons. So remember the two prongs on the mandrels? That's how I can make those. So if you imagine the prongs are like that, I've made the bead like that on it. So I've wound the glass round the mandrel, and obviously I've got to get it in there as well, and then I've decorated the top to make the pattern. There's a little Marini in there. I don't know whether you can see the little Marini. He's just in there. These are just dots made with stringers. And oh, right, this button also has a Marini in it, which is like a flower Marini, and it's made with a normal bead. Actually, I'll show you just a normal bead. So you make it like a normal bead, which is the base, and then I add a big blob of bead of glass on the top and squish it in it. If you have to, you know, sometimes they're not always straight, but you're basically squishing it onto the side of a bead. And then once you've got a nice dome, as I say, glass tends to ball, so it usually domes up quite nicely. And then I put the Marini on top of the button. Obviously this is called a shank button, and so that's a different way to make buttons. Whoops, over there to these ones that are made with the 2 prongs. So yeah, there's different ways of making buttons. This is another use you can use for stringers. I've just sort of used it as a line. You can use them for lines. I mean, really clever people use them for creating characters and things on top of just normal beads. I'm not quite that good, I'm afraid. It's not something I'm particularly good at. Just winding the stringers around the beads I'm fine at. Yeah, more Marini in there. Lots of dots. So these are lentils. These are a lentil made in the press. And I don't think this is not the straight-sided one. This is a normal lentil. Don't know whether I've got a straight-sided one in here. I think these are all fairly normal ones. They're quite sort of sharper on some edges. Some aren't quite so good. Some of these are my seconds, but these ones are alright. The black glass in this one is called gunmetal. It is a sim glass, and it actually oxidizes itself. I don't have to do anything. The glass itself oxidizes and creates this sort of shiny silver, but it's the only glass that does that. That's more of a straight-sided lentil. I think that was one of my really big ones. Got Marini in it, stringers. I've used stringer in this one, and I put dots, and then I've dragged a tool through it. You know, remember my pointy tools? I've dragged them through it and tried to create feathers. Didn't work too well. It worked better on that side, I think. I don't know whether you can see it. It's really difficult when it's thin like that. So this is a transparent glass. Obviously a lot of these are opaques. This one is made on dark ivory. The actual glass that I put on it creates the webbing, which is a black. Let's get these out actually. Let's see what I can find. Yeah, see, this one does it as well. Do you remember me showing you the black, the big fat rod? Well, that big fat rod can create this webbing in the ivory. And so some glasses just have certain reactions to certain colours. Ivory is a very reactive glass. If you put silver on it, this is basically what it does. Can you see you can I don't know whether I can catch the silver in it. I'm not sure whether I can. This one might better, I don't know. It's really difficult to do it. It's not really showing up, is it? Right, if I use silver foil, and then what I've done is I've made a base bead, which is quite a long one. Got a Marini that didn't come out too well on that side, I don't think. That one's slightly better. As I say, some of these are just my practice beads. I've basically rolled a bead in the silver foil, then encased it in the blue. It's all blue, so I put blue down, then I wrapped it with silver foil, and then encased it again with a transparent blue, and so you get lots of lovely sparkly silver inside the bead. Sparkly, sparkly. I love glass. Here's another one. That wasn't much better either. These are dots upon dots upon dots. I've hand shaped this particular bead. I actually probably started with the green in the middle, put the blue and the yellow on the ends, made it slightly narrow this end, and used gravity to let the glass fall to make the bulbous part at the bottom. Then I've just covered it in dots upon dots upon dots, and I call these my camouflage beads. I started off with some military named glass in the sort of what colour was it? Kind of a khaki green colour. A khaki is a beigey colour in America, but we call it we call our green military uniforms khaki here in England. Yeah, so this again is one of my camouflage beads. It's the dot on dot on dot on dot technique that I used at the time in camouflage colours. I think that's probably one of the glasses I used, that colour. So, if you remember the tool, I don't know whether you can see it on this one very well. Oh yeah, I can see a bit. That I had, the embossing tool with the fan effect. I can't see it on that one. I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll get one of the head pins out, because that you might be able to see it better on that. I made this sort of a hearty shape one with the fan. I had to line it up because the fan's a little bit off centre, so that's the grooves from that embossing tool that's got the fan, the brass one, to create that bead. Let's see if I can, yeah, there we go. She's focusing okay today. There's a few more in here. This is just a squashed bead that I've hand squashed with my tongs, and then I've used that tool to squash it. It makes it look a bit like a shell. That's what I kind of use them. I call them sort of shell beads, because it does make a shell look to them. So that's this is a mixture glass which has got the ivory and a dark blue in it. Makes this lovely streaky glass. I love it when the glass does the job for me. I don't have to do it myself. Here's another one. This one's got like a dark browny colour. They call it fossil, which is great for making shelly type beads. So yes, there's some of my head pins. So yes, this is Triton. This is the beautiful Triton to make this gorgeous silver on the beads. You can just sort of see, I think, if I can get the camera to focus, might show up as a blue look to it. I can see it, but I don't know whether the camera's picking it up really. Oh yeah, there's a bit of blue look. That's Triton, which is a double helix glass. All the silver glasses have got different names, obviously. But Triton is probably one of the easiest ones to use, which is why I love it so much, because I do have trouble with some of the others, but Aura and Helios are another two favourites that I use. But you can get kind of like a semi-goldy silver to it as well. In actual fact, the gold is just the silver starting to turn, and it can go muddy if you overheat it, because what the glass does is the oxidizing flame brings the silver to the surface from inside the glass rod, and so you know you can overcook it and it can start to turn this slightly gold, and then it'll go mucky and horrible, and you've lost all that lovely silver then, and it's gone, it's had it. And yeah, I've got, so this one's got like a tealy colour. I don't know whether you can see that. And then it's got Triton making the swipes. These are my bud beads. You know, you put a bead on the top, and maybe some little spaces in between or something, and make a loop like this, and you've got yourself you can make yourself a pair of earrings if you've got a pair. Any sort of dangles, you can make them into a dangle that you hang on your books. This is a wrap loop, and I'll show you that in part 2 of my bead dangles video. I'm going to be doing that after I finish doing this. I don't know whether there's any others I can show you that are any different really. These are probably some of my favourite makes. That stringer as well, and all these little lines and that, and the dots are made from stringers. Sorry, the cable getting caught up. I call these my cherry blossom beads. I use stringers to create all the lines and that all over them, and obviously a red stringer makes the dots, which make the cherry blossoms. Nice red ones in this case. I've left them raised because they're bobbly, it makes them bobbly, which are cute. So I've shaped the beak myself in this particular instant. These ones are made from one of the Marvers that you saw. I think you saw the kind of diamondy shaped Marver, a handheld one. And I made the bead using one of those, one of the diamond shaped ones. And then I've wrapped the string around the bead. And then finally put the dots on, cherry dots, cherry blossom dots. So some of those, some are just normal shaped beads, and these are probably one of my favourite ones. I enjoy making those, as I do my head pins. There's some blue ones in here. Yeah, I couldn't use a lot of these. Some of the dots aren't quite melted in far enough, and with time they could just ping off, so I couldn't use those. So that's why I've still got some of them, because they weren't good enough for selling. See, they're quite sticky outy. And they can catch, and then they just ping off and break, and then you're left with a sharp piece of glass. So yes, some of my beads I can't sell, and so I keep them myself, and I don't care if I use them. I can always take them off and put something else on, but obviously I can't sell them that way. But I'm not selling anymore. I will set up my bead making equipment again once the workshop revamp is completely done. I hope to have another bench with purely from my bead making equipment, and possibly, I don't know which way around it would be. I mean, this particular bench was originally made for my stained glass. The hubster is quite a clever chappy, even though now he does have health problems, so he can't do things quite so easily. So yes, this bench originally was my whole workshop really was created for when I used to do stained glass. I started out about 20 odd years ago. I went off to college, evening classes. Excuse me, I feel like I'm falling off my chair. Went off to evening classes to learn how to make stained glass pieces, and my daughter was barely 2, I think, when I did it, and he said, I don't want it in the house, I'll build you a workshop on the end of the garage, which is what he did. This is it. So it's been up for about 20 odd years, probably around that. Yeah, she was quite young when he built it fairly quickly. He was quite clever that way. So he made the bench for me to do my stained glass on, which is why it's so large. Over the years, the stained glass didn't quite do what I wanted it to do for me. It was a bit time consuming and it was, I don't know what it was about it, but I loved it. I just not sure if I was very good at it, to be honest. So then it got turned over to various things, my jewellery making, and eventually obviously my bead making. I've been bead making since 2007-8, and yeah, so it's been my bead making workshop ever since. But 3 years ago I had a fall, like I said, at work. It was quite a bad fall, knocked me for 6 at the time. I cut my head open. I had 32 stitches in my head, and I landed on my knees. I basically head-butted a wooden post. I tripped over a child on the school playground. I used to be a dinner lady, looking after the children at lunchtime, and I never really wanted to come back in here. So that's why my bench got left exactly as it was. Flame off happened about a week or so before I had my fall. Flame off is actually a bead convention, bead makers convention, where we all gather once a year in the Midlands, and we can buy glass, we can buy all sorts of stuff to do a bead making. We can do anything. There's demonstrations. They have guest bead makers from around the world, and it's fantastic. I used to love going, and I've not done anything for 3 years since my fall. So it was time to clear it away, because it needed cleaning, because it was just covered in dirt and dust and muck. And it took me 2 weeks to clear it and clean it and put it away. So here we are. The bench is just going to be used as a making and recording. Behind me, it's all stacked up behind me. I can hardly get in the room, because I have ended up with a few remnants of my daughter's uni stuff that we need to sort out. We need to get rid of some of it and move it about, find new homes for it, but there's lots to do. So yes, I'm going to be recording from here now. This is pretty much how it's going to be. I'm going to have to ship stuff up and down, because I can't get it all in here. You know, all of my inks and all of my other pieces of equipment, and you know, I've got a basic equipment up here. Anything I need to record with, I'll have to bring it with me, and then obviously take it back, because I've got sort of trolleys with drawers in, and I can't bring them up because I've got nowhere to put them. I've got so much stuff up here. So yeah, phase 1. This is phase 1 complete, which was to clear the bench. Phase 2 is to start clearing the room, which I can't do because all my stained glass I need to sell off, and lots of other, I've got mosaic in the cupboards, mosaic tiles and various things, jewellery making tools, because I used to do a bit of all sorts really. With the wire work I used to use hammers and stuff to flatten wires and things. But yes, so that's my bead making. I hope you enjoyed it and I didn't bore you too much, because I have rattled on a little bit, haven't I? I'll probably end up cutting half of this out. And I was going to put it in my part 2 of my bead making dangles, but it's too long. It's just too long. So I've split it and made it its own little video. So I hope you enjoyed seeing my beads and telling you how they're made and giving you a bit of an insight. That's about it. I'll put them back in there. Oh, did I tell you about frit? Oh, this one's got frit on. Right. Yeah, I think you can see the frit here. See how it makes very unusual shape. They're not always necessarily round, because all the little shards, little tiny frit speckles aren't always sort of very, very round themselves. So they do ball up, but they're just different sizes really. Then I've actually put a stringer in and twisted. So what I do is I put a colour on, then the blue I've wrapped on this side and that side, and then you have to join them together on the mandrel, and then I've just, you kind of lay the frit out. I don't know if you remember seeing a big flat marver. There's a big square one. I lay it out on there and then I just basically dunk the bead in it and then melt it in, and it makes all these pretty frit patterns. This is frit as well, and then I've twisted it. This I've just dunked the end in and then I've pulled the point using my tweezers, but I flattened it first with my tongs. So some of these are hand shaped, which is what this one is, hand shaped. That's why it's a tiny bit lopsided. It's one of my early beads. These are hand shaped. And I use the marvers, the flat marvers, to shape them into, you know, trying to make them as uniform as possible, but they are handmade, so that doesn't always work. And obviously the bead presses make various shapes for you. I think this one is what they call a crunch bead. So I basically have a big blob of glass on the mandrel, and then I literally squash it with 2 plates. I didn't show you that one. And it's basically domed both sides on the plate, and you're just basically crunching it to make the shape. Then I've added silver to the dark ivory, creates this sort of woveny kind of pattern. And this on top, these lines are ivory and silver and ivy stringer mixed together and used on the top. So yes, glass is fun, and the reactions you get are just, it's amazing. Lots to learn. It's taken me a long time to learn some of it, and there's still lots that I haven't learned, but obviously you find things that you enjoy doing and you go down that line. This is a heart that I've got a press for, but I do sometimes make my own shaped heart beads, so they're not always quite as uniform as obviously a pressed bead. Well, I hope you enjoyed that. Any questions, just leave them in the comments below. I'm quite happy to answer them, and I hope to see you next time in my Making Bead Dangles Part 2, and I will see you very soon. Thank you for watching, and bye for now.